Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, August 31st. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin with some breaking news. A wildfire burning in the southeast county, homes in danger. The wildfire is in the southern part of San Diego County in an area known as Barrett Junction, south of Dulzura and off of State Route 94. It's northwest of Tecate, roughly 3 miles from the border. It has charred more than 300 acres, and CAL FIRE reports that one structure has been destroyed, others threatened, and an evacuation order is in effect for the Barrett Lake Road area, Coyote Holler Road area, and Round Potrero Road. Road closures are also taking place due to the smoke, flames, and fire equipment in the area. This fire broke out around 2:30. The cause still not known, and conditions are hot and quite windy. And we'll continue to monitor the events out there and bring you any updates as warranted. Tonight, fences have closed off Harborside Park in Chula Vista. Bulldozers moved in this morning as part of a city effort to clean up the site, which sits next to an elementary school. KPBS reporter MG Perez was there when dozens of homeless people who'd camped at the park for months were forced out.
Everyone was on the move this morning. Contractors with a South Bay Fence Company joined Chula Vista city workers in deploying city council orders to demolish the growing tent community here in Harborside Park. Dozens of homeless people were moved out quickly. Some of them prayed for a miracle and help. Alexandra Salupe is here from Tijuana, trying to find a home for the children she left behind.
My girls cry every day because they want to be with me. This is everything. This is God. It has to be God.
While the shutdown happened, there were several local community agencies on site to offer options.
We're offering them housing. Everything is provided for them. Hygiene, showers, a bed right now.
According to reports from Chula Vista city leaders, Harborside Park has deteriorated into a place of criminal activity and risks to public health. Harborside Elementary School is nearby, with young children, including Veronica Riplinger's 4-year-old granddaughter, Annabelle, who just started transitional kindergarten.
I agree there's a homeless problem, and I think we need to address it, but they shouldn't be living in a public park where other people want to go or spend time, and we can't go there.
The Chula Vista Elementary School District supports the city's action, and the superintendent does not mince words.
Our commitment is to ensure that the safety and welfare of every single student is our number one priority. And we will do whatever it takes to make that happen.
The Chula Vista city attorney said in a statement that the decision to temporarily close Harborside Park was approved in accordance with all applicable laws. It will remain closed for at least 90 days. That means bulldozing lives that are already on the edge. The city could extend the park's closure longer as officials try to figure out the best way to make this space safer and available to everyone. It's a heartbreaking challenge, especially for advocates who want to help those who need it most.
I know stuff happens that goes on, but I see people trying their best to live in this situation to get to the next step.
That next step will no longer be here. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Another cleanup is in the works in Mission Bay Park. 169 decaying mobile homes will be removed from De Anza Point. But as KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us, what exactly will happen with the land after it's cleared is still unclear.
Terra Vista Management has run Campland at Mission Bay Park for years, and they're the company that's cleaning up this mess. They plan on turning it into campsites with some of the most beautiful views imaginable.
Installing new campsites which utilize the existing infrastructure that's always been here, and then making really necessary long deferred repairs to this incredible bike and pedestrian path going around the cove, and then landscaping, remediation, and road repairs, that sort of thing.
It is a monumental task. Nearly 170 abandoned mobile homes in various states of decay.
$8 million worth of work, and it involves the abatement of these homes, most of which have lead and asbestos.
No one has lived here on this city-owned property since 2019. After pandemic-related delays and lots of regulatory hurdles to jump over, Terra Vista finally received approval from the California Coastal Commission last month to clean the place up. But as they have for years, Campland is facing opposition from some environmental groups, including the San Diego Humane Society, who say there needs to be a lot more wetland restoration here, and that will mean getting rid of some of Campland.
Kendall Frost Marsh, which we're looking at here, is the only remaining habitat that we have in Mission Bay for endangered species, for water quality protection, for sea level rise resilience, and for access to education and community space like this.
Meyer says the Audubon Society is not against camping. In fact, he says they favor camping opportunities here. But he says the city's master plan now calls for 700 acres of wetlands by 2035, and he says this area is the best place to get much of that wetland restoration.
This is the exact right time for the city to be thinking about this, because they are in their De Anza land use planning process, and they have the power to say camping should stay, here's what we want it to look like, and it should be right here.
City leaders still have to decide whether to use campland property for wetlands and how much. Meyer also says the Kumeyaay tribe should be considered, as this was all their native ancestral land. But for now, both sides wait on the city's decision, one that may very well move the ultimate fate of this land to be decided by the courts. John Carroll, KPBS News.
We're all being asked to curb our energy use during this prolonged heat wave. California power grid operators are asking consumers to save power now through 9 o'clock tonight. And more flex alerts are possible through the Labor Day weekend. They warn that there could be a shortage of energy if things get worse, but they are taking steps to bring all energy resources online. They offered ways to reduce your energy usage during this time.
These include raising your thermostat to 78 degrees, avoiding the use of large appliances, and turning off unnecessary lights. If you have an electric vehicle that needs to be charged, we ask you to please do so before 4 p.m. when we have plenty of solar energy on the system.
And they say that curbing individual energy use has made a difference in the past. Forecasters say that we can expect triple-digit temps with very little relief in the evening hours. We'll have your complete forecast coming up in a little later on the newscast. San Diego County Supervisors are pushing forward with their climate-friendly plan to reshape life in the community. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says major changes are coming.
The county's effort to reduce carbon and greenhouse gas emissions is moving forward more than a year after it was launched. Supervisors want to cut back on things that contribute to a warming climate that could dramatically change life in the county. That means decarbonizing power, transportation, and agriculture.
So I think we're looking at a healthier and really more enjoyable way of life for San Diego if we move forward.
The framework calls for more electric vehicles, electrifying buildings, including people's homes, and changing the way people get around.
We need to seriously invest in active transportation programs like cycling, walking, and taking public transit.
Essentially, the county wants to reduce how much carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, eliminate super pollutants like soot, and develop natural systems that can capture and store carbon. And county officials are determined to do it without wrecking the economy.
And we cannot simultaneously try and save the planet and destroy the middle class. We have to figure out how we do both of those things. We also spend a lot of time on this board addressing issues that at their root are about poverty and people not being paid enough.
The overarching goal is to get the county and every local city to work together to achieve a net zero future. That means only emitting as much carbon as the region can take back in. Local builders want to make sure fixing the climate crisis doesn't make the region's housing pinch worse.
And we want to ensure that the actions that we take, that you take, also include some robust incentives to try to offset the negative impacts that this will have on housing costs and housing productions.
State legislation calls for California to hit net zero carbon emissions by 2045. San Diego County is aiming for a 40% cut by 2030 as they work toward hitting the state's goal. The planning document could be finalized early next year. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
One hurdle has now been cleared for new COVID-19 vaccines. Today, the FDA gave a green light to updated boosters aimed at the most dominant variants. And as Mandy Gaither reports, a top health official is also responding to criticism that the government is moving too quickly on these boosters.
In the U.S., BA.5 continues to be the dominant variant, last week causing nearly 9 out of 10 new COVID infections, according to CDC estimates.
I really would love to be ahead of this variant this season.
That's what the updated COVID-19 boosters are aimed at doing. It's a bivalent vaccine, which means it contains mRNA encoding from the original coronavirus spike protein, together with mRNA encoding from the spike protein of the Omicron BA.4 and BA.5 variants.
As we have updated these booster shots for the fall, the data that we are looking at is related to very, very small changes in the mRNA sequence and really shouldn't impact safety at all.
Both Moderna and Pfizer have now been given initial emergency use authorization from the FDA for their updated boosters, but there is some criticism that the U.S. government is moving too quickly and without enough human data.
There's always a question here of being too slow versus too fast. And I think one of the challenges is if we wait for those data to emerge in human data, not just mice data, in human data, we will be using what I would consider to be a potentially outdated vaccine.
CDC Director Dr. Reshape Walensky says the strategy now is to tailor vaccines that would have the greatest effect, ideally one that would have less waning over time by targeting the variants that are dominant now. For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
It's now up to an advisory committee with the CDC to recommend the new boosters. The agency's director would then need to accept that recommendation before the new vaccines would be available. That vote is expected to happen tomorrow. Life expectancy in the United States is at its lowest point in decades. That's according to CDC data published today. Life expectancy now stands at just over 76 years. That's the lowest it's been since 1996 and the biggest two-year decline in a century. It dropped by nearly a year between 2020 and 2021 and by more than 2.5 years overall since the start of the pandemic. The CDC says deaths from COVID-19 contributed to half of the decline.
This really deserves a lot of attention. It's not just the pandemic, although that's a dominant factor. We don't have a universal health system with the access that we need, and this is showing up in our results.
Injuries, heart disease, chronic liver disease, drug overdose deaths, and suicide also contributed to the life expectancy decline. Like in many places, rates of mental illness and substance abuse are skyrocketing in San Diego County. At the same time, the region is facing a shortage of behavioral health workers. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman has more on a new plan that aims to close the gap.
Over the next 5 years, we need to recruit more people than currently work in this field. That's a very, very tall order.
The San Diego Workforce Partnership's chief economist, Daniel Ennemarkt, helped prepare the behavioral health report that he calls one of a kind. It included surveying some 1,600 behavioral health workers and students. Results found that the majority of jobs are underpaying.
This is a problem. We can't recruit and retain people if we aren't paying them.
The Workforce Partnership presented their findings to local providers during a recent behavioral health symposium. Officials estimate between the private, public, and nonprofit sector, there's currently 17,000 behavioral health workers to serve a county of more than 3 million.
The current workforce is meeting a lot of the behavioral health need, but not all of it.
According to the partnership, to meet the growing need and replace people leaving the field, about 18,000 more workers need to be hired in the San Diego region over the next 5 years. That includes everything from peer support specialists to counselors, social workers, psychiatrists, and other hospital staff.
I would say nowhere in America has built out the system of behavioral health care to provide the right care to the right person at the right time. And I want San Diego to be the first.
Chairman of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, Nathan Fletcher, commissioned this study. He says no one entity can fix this gap overnight, but many have to chip in.
We're hoping to not only leverage our friends in philanthropy, to have the county join, to have the state join. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. to advocate for funding there, because we've got to develop a system that gets the right person, the right care at the right time. And the investing in people and in the workforce is a vital component.
The county has been doing more in recent years. The last 4 budget cycles have resulted in a total $230 million increase in behavioral health services, with the overall budget now approaching $900 million. For Fletcher, this issue is personal. He says he had a turbulent and traumatic childhood, then as a Marine had multiple combat deployments.
Watch the impact of combat weigh not just on me, but on my friends, and I know how serious that is. But the reality of trauma is it's not just Marines and Navy SEALs in war who go through this. Trauma is trauma. You know, anyone who survived a sexual assault, anyone who's been in a difficult situation could be experiencing that.
The county issues contracts to local nonprofits who then provide behavioral health services in the region. But some argue that system is outdated and doesn't keep pace with rising costs of living.
Right now, the county is allowing us to do hire-on bonuses, but we also need to do retention bonuses. We need to be able to reward the staff who've stuck with us, especially during the pandemic.
Catherine Nicario is CEO of San Diego's chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. They work with up to 40,000 San Diegans each year. Nicario says some of her staff are leaving the field because of burnout.
Individuals are also leaving for higher paying jobs within the same industry. Since there is such a workforce shortage, what we're seeing happening is folks are leaving for $1 or $2 more an hour and literally giving no notice, like saying, hey, today's my last day, I'm going to go work for so-and-so and I start tomorrow.
The Workforce Partnership estimates the price tag for hiring and training 18,000 additional workers would be around $424 million. They're recommending a down payment strategy. It calls for investing about a third of that to bring on thousands of workers over the next 5 to 10 years. Nicario is part of the steering committee that aims to put these goals into action.
This is truly where the work does begin. We don't want this to go up on a shelf and gather dust. So we have to get a core group of individuals together that over the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years can make sure this is continuing to be pushed forward.
The Workforce Partnership also recommends developing a regional training hub to help create a steady pipeline of behavioral health workers. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Lots of heat on the way over the course of the next several days that will span the holiday weekend. We'll continue to stay dry, and in fact, heading toward the upcoming weekend, Sunday, some spots will be approaching record high temperatures. And while this map looks the same as yesterday, just showing the nature of the excessive heat warnings, I'll step out of the way. And we're talking about almost all areas. The exceptions would be Catalina Island, San Clemente Island, and then that stretch from Santa Monica to Long Beach, California. That's the only areas really not in the excessive heat warning. Water vapor loop, just a ton of dry air in place. Now there's going to be, again, some energy lifting its way into the northwest as we work our way into late weekend this weekend. As that slides its way even further away, we're going to see the heat building. Mainly clear, and the humidity is going to be another factor here in the coming days. Overnight low temperature dropping down to 71. Oceanside 67, Chula Vista 71, Borrego Springs only falling off into the mid-80s. Look at this. We're talking about this Thursday into Wednesday of next week. Like I said, some spots will see records challenged, especially as we talk about the San Joaquin, Sacramento Valley, and back over the interior. And we're going to see that warmth all the way to the coast. All right. San Diego 83, the high temperatures we go into tomorrow. Borrego Springs up to 111, Ramona 101, Oceanside into the mid-80s. Futurecast, quiet, not going to be following showers or any downpours anytime soon. So let's get to those temperatures and look at this at the coast. Core of the heat coming in Saturday and Sunday. That's when we can approach some record highs. So we talk about inland zones. Triple digits on the way. Find ways to stay cool. Important to stay hydrated with water. Be sure to check on the pets. Even the mountainous terrain, we're going to be well up into the 80s. And in the deserts, the 1-teens by Monday, 114. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Many California children skipped kindergarten during the pandemic, but a bill approved by the Senate this week could make it mandatory. Senate Bill 70 would make it a requirement for kids to complete the grade before moving up to first grade starting in the 2024 academic year. The bill is headed to Governor Newsom's desk, but it is uncertain whether he'll sign it after his Department of Finance expressed opposition because of how much it would cost. 19 other states require kindergarten. Attempts to require it in California in the past have failed. Governor Newsom has until September 30th to make his decision. The Federal Trade Commission is issuing a warning about scammers possibly using the recent news about student loan forgiveness as bait. Cole Higgins has some tips from the Better Business Bureau to protect yourself.
Unsolicited calls, texts, emails, and fraudulent websites. It's how scammers will likely use the latest news about student loan forgiveness to bait new victims.
Scammers will promise fast forgiveness, whether it is additional benefits, faster benefits, erasing your student debt. All of those are empty promises that will lead to an empty pocketbook.
The Better Business Bureau is bracing for a spike in calls and reports after the Federal Trade Commission issued a consumer alert about potential scams involving student loans. Last Wednesday, President Joe Biden announced a plan to address student loan debt, including debt forgiveness for certain borrowers. The BBB says scammers may use the news to attempt to defraud borrowers looking for eligibility information.
It's important to know that the government is not allowed to call you about your student loan unless you've given permission.
The Better Business Bureau has these tips to protect yourself. First, understand that these government programs are free to sign up for, and that anyone offering you help for a fee is a red flag. Number 2, know the ins and outs of your student loan. Know the terms and don't fall for it if a scammer promises you benefits the government or your loan provider hasn't already offered you. Number 3, do your research. Look up the lender or company reaching out to you to find out if there's a scam artist on the other end of the line. Number 4, look twice before you click. The BBB says some imposters often create lookalike government websites, so pay attention to the URL. And finally, protect your private data. Don't give out your social security number, federal student aid ID, or any other personal information. For today's Consumer Watch, I'm Cole Higgins.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Justice Department spells out the lengths it went to retrieve classified documents from former President Trump. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And we have a breaking news update for you. A wildfire burning in the southeast county has now grown to over 1,400 acres. The wildfire is in an area known as Barrett Junction, south of Dulzura and off of State Route 94. CAL FIRE reports one structure has been destroyed, others are threatened, and an evacuation order is in effect for the Barrett Lake Road area, Coyote Holler Road area, and Round Potrero Road. We will continue to monitor this fire and we'll bring you updates on KPBS Radio 89.5 FM and kpbs.org. Major League Baseball is finally coming to Mexico City 3 seasons after games were canceled because of the pandemic. The San Diego Padres and San Francisco Giants will play a 2-game series there on April 29th and 30th. The Padres will be the home team. While spring training games have been played in Mexico City, these will be the first regular season games. Lots of smiles and wagging tails in El Cajon today as a flight carrying more than 100 rescued beagles arrived safely. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado says the dogs will soon be ready for their forever homes.
San Diego Humane Society staff and volunteers watch as precious cargo arrives at Gillespie Field. 108 rescue beagles. Their arrival was filled with happiness and excitement. President of the San Diego Humane Society, Dr. Gary Weitzman, unloaded the first pup off the plane.
She's really excited. She really is. And she deserves to be. First time she's been out of a research lab. So this is really great news.
And these are no ordinary rescues. They're the last batch of 4,000 beagles saved from a Virginia-based company that breeds and sells animals for use in scientific testing. Their rescue came after the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit. One by one, the precious pups were packed up and quickly shuttled to the Humane Society's El Cajon Animal Campus, where dozens of staff and volunteers have been working overtime getting ready to welcome the special delivery.
We have swimming pools set up so that they can have a big water party since it's going to be so hot out here today.
They will immediately place them in foster homes, but they will need donations to support their care until they're well enough to go to forever homes.
This is the beginning of their next journey into new homes, and we're ecstatic to be able to help them get into backyards and living rooms and a family that they love.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Sweet little pups. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.